Hi, everyone. Hope everybody had a wonderful and happy Thanksgiving. And can you believe it? It's almost Christmas. Yippee! Anyways, I hope everybody had a wonderful weekend and a beautiful time with your family and your children. And I was speaking with somebody, and we were talking about how sometimes it's easier. We were talking about destruction and building, and we got to the point where we were talking about how sometimes it could be easier to destroy than to build. And if somebody gets into the mode of destroying and they keep doing that, it's hard for them to come out of that. And it got me thinking about Sisyphus rolling the stone up the hill. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. I think it's very interesting, and I think it's a good episode. If you have children that are like 12 and up, you should discuss this with them because it's important and they need to know, because not everything is easy. You have to have good habits and practices to do the right thing. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to be speaking about Sisyphus and the hill of humanity, and how it's an uphill battle toward our consciousness. And let's look at that, the Sisyphus rolling the stone uphill, as a metaphor that he is building his consciousness. Okay? So there's 1,000 ways to do it wrong, and only a few ways to do it right. And it's important to understand this, because when we make choices, sometimes these choices that we make aren't always conscious. We're sort of like, we just, make it, and then we don't think about for a moment the probability and the possibilities of the outcome. So, and this is the nature of life. I mean, we have to understand that. We're not perfect beings, and it's so easy to fall off the path. It is, and it's so difficult to rise above it. So, in other words, it's hard to grow up for some people. It is. And some adults have not grown up. And this is why it's important, I think, to share this with your children. Really share it. And, when you guys are like driving to the beach or you're out gardening, let's say, these are the times to bring it up, or even at dinner. I know it sounds funny to say that, but I mean, to bring this stuff up. So it's hard to grow up, and it's hard to make the right choices, especially when the world, as we see now, offers 1,000 wrong ones every single day. We see that. And that's where the negative side gains its leverage. Because, like anything, you get into cycles. So you have to be careful of that. And because really, in a lot of ways, it's effortless to fall down the hill. Think about it. You're falling down the hill, and you're picking up momentum. As you're falling, you're rolling, right? But while on the positive side, the one that builds, uplifts, and restores must always climb the hill, right? So it's harder for some people to climb the hill, and easier for some to roll down the hill. And it's always a push, always a struggle upward, right? And you don't have to look at it negatively. A lot of people don't want to talk about this because they think, oh, that's negative. But you know what? When a lot of people, they start their business and everything's gung-ho, woo, I mean, it's good. You want to be like that. But then you get in the middle of like a startup and all of a sudden you're going, holy moly, this is hard. And you have to anticipate that it's not always going to be a downhill stream like the fish, going down. It's easy. But when they got to come back, it's harder to do that. So we have to talk about this because there's nothing wrong with talking about struggling. There isn't. And I think it's sort of, to me, a weakness not to talk about the obvious. So, and this is what got me thinking about Sisyphus, because I started to really think about life, my life, and people that I know. And the myth of the Sisyphus, it just like came back to me. And to condemn to roll a massive stone up the hill and, to watch it tumble back down, people would say, well, what is this? Some, maybe Sisyphus, he was cursed. This was something that was cursed upon him. But I want to explain something. Maybe it isn't, and maybe this is life, and these are lessons and tests for the soul to build, and the spirit to build, and to get strong, right? And maybe he chose it. Okay, good. Yeah, when I chose to do a startup, I worked 24/7 for 8 years and didn't make any money. Everything we made went back into marketing. And, it was hard. It was really hard. And I was trying to do the numbers, trying to figure it out. And, in a lot of ways, in some ways, I want to say the word fail. And people get, don't say that because, that you at least you tried. Yes, I know I tried. But at the same time, it didn't work out the way I thought it would. Now people would say, well, then you were weak and you couldn't follow all the way through. Yeah, maybe I am weak and I couldn't follow all the way through. And I decided to make a choice and to get out. So, because I couldn't keep spending money that I didn't have. So my point is that because to push that stone upward again and again and again, it takes a lot of will, right? It takes consciousness. And it takes strength of spirit to keep going when the whole world is siding into the ease, the indulgence, or destruction, right? And it's sliding right into it. And this is how I want to be, the way I look at life is I have to be honest with self. And this may be my honesty with myself, and others don't feel the same way, and that's okay. But I'm bringing a different perspective here in. And I think it's good to have an open dialogue about this, because really through patience, some entities or even entire systems, you can say, get good at being disruptive. They do. We're seeing it right now playing out. Because we have a divide happening. The middle class is gone. It's leaving our society, while the top is going to the top, and then there's no middle. It's top and bottom. And Now, this isn't something, like maybe, some of the motivators would say, well, you can't look at it like this. You're not looking at it right. That yes, there is always an opportunity, but then that hill gets more steep to climb or to push the stone up, because inflation, and you've got the dollar going out. You've got the dollar isn't worth as much. So when you go to the grocery store and you get 3 things and it comes to be $108, and you're like, good God, I mean, I was at the store 3 days ago and the lady didn't have enough money in front of me. I didn't have any money, but I said, I'll pay, because she had her 2 little kids, and her kids, I could see that, they were, they knew something was wrong, and I was like, oh no, don't worry about it. Sometimes my card doesn't work either. I made it like that, because sometimes, the company, JP Morgan or whatever, they, they have like something goes out, and the card doesn't go through. Sometimes I don't bring my other card. I was saying this while the 2 kids could hear, so that, she didn't have to say, we don't have money, kids. So, but you have to see this, and you have to look at this, and you have to be honest about it, right? And there's nothing wrong with pushing the stone up the hill, right? And that's why I feel like if you can lower the negative in your life, and you can move that negative in a direction that's getting better and better, then, or that is not, you're getting out of negative, and you're going into the good, and it's getting better and better. But if you stay in that negative direction, and it gets, more negative and more negative, then you just have more destruction and more destruction. And that's why the story of good versus evil is not a myth, because it's really true. The more corrupt you are, the more corrupt you get. It's kind of like the Godfather scene when they come in with the drugs, and hey, Godfather, we got a deal. We can start selling drugs. And he says, well, I don't know. That's a dirty business. I never really wanted to get into that. And the kids all, try to talk him into it and stuff like that. And it just gets worse and worse, right? So one day it's mobbing everybody and asking for reparations from all the businesses and what have you, and we'll to protect you. And then it goes into drugs, to arms, to whatever, right? So you have to be aware of this. And it's really an ongoing play of consciousness itself. So if you're unaware, then, and you're not conscious, then you're going to make those moves. And free will is really the stage upon which both grow, because we do have free will. Even though Sam Harris talks about not having free will, we have the free will to actually make the decision today on whatever that is that you're deciding on doing. But let's talk about good versus, not being good. You have the choice to be good or to do something that's not good, right? And today we can see that everywhere. Our global system is really ripping toward the negative. It is. I mean, politics is just, it's a shit show. And justice is rarely at the forefront. I mean, come on, give me a break. Everybody's the bad person. Have you ever noticed? It's weird. It's like, to just try to follow the politics, you have to be an actual ignorant human being to even try to understand what's going on, because it doesn't even make sense. There is no foundation of goodness there. There isn't. So we release those who harm and exploit or even kill. We're seeing it all the time, and only to watch them do it again and again and again, and they get out 76 times. They do crime, they go in, they get out, and it's in, out, in, out, in, out. And it's as though we've become numb to the consequences. And let's discuss this, because it's happening. It is. And when society reaches that point, it becomes easier to be negative than positive, right? And easier to destroy than to build. Because how are you going to teach the person that has committed 76 crimes? They go into jail, then they get released 76 times. How can you get them to become more positive when they're on the road of destruction? It's going to take a lot of work and counsel. I mean, come on. You're going to have to go and have your brain and stuff looked at, right? And go into therapy, and that could take years. I mean, I know people that have been in therapy for 40 years, since they were 20, and they're 60. I'm not talking about myself, but I know a few women, and I always ask, well, what do you talk about? Like, what things do you talk about? Like, I'm always interested, because I don't see them getting better. They have the same problems that they've been bringing up to me for 40 years. They haven't solved and moved forward. So it's something to kind of like look at. So really, we have to look at that, that negative to the positive force, and how to change the negative to go into the positive, because it is easier to destroy than to build. And imagine standing on top of the hill one way, and it's the long climb back up, fall the other, and gravity does the rest, right? Gravity just takes you right down. And that's why the more positive you are, the easier it becomes to stay that way. That's why affirmations and being around positive people, the more negative you are, the faster the fall, right? And this is why humanity must evolve, because we have to get out of that loop. That's why the Ouroboros, the snake that goes in a circle and it's eating its own tail, doesn't make any sense to me. They try to make it very positive, but the first time I saw that, I was like, something's not right. Why would I want to be eating my own tail and staying on the loop when I want growth, right? So, because we don't want to de-evolve, right? The quality is really about our consciousness. And because if we continue slipping downward into corruption and manipulation and fear, and then the citizens of Earth becomes like a Sisyphus, right? Where it's a constant battle of falling down and rolling back up. You have to have some balance. Remember the hemisphere, the left and the right brain, you have to get them in balance. And part of that is through consciousness. So we don't want to be forever pushing the stone uphill either, exhausted by the weight of systems like our construct that keep rolling back down. And that's what we see every election. It is a lot like politics. I mean, we vote, we hope, we push, but the boulder slides again. And it feels meaningless at times, doesn't it? Like, I notice the people that don't, maybe, they don't talk about it too much online. They're probably the ones having the best life because they're not so wrapped up in the finite world, and they're getting stuff done. They're focused, and I think that's the best thing to do. That's what I believe. But that's the point of the myth, is that the punishment of Sisyphus was not only in his endless labor of pushing that up the hill, but it was our interpretation of it. And I mean, I always kind of like think about that. I don't know why, but like for years I've thought about the Sisyphus. Because they have all the bronze statues and stuff like that, and we have one here in town, and I just saw it like about 2 weeks ago. And there's a philosopher, Albert Camus, that said, one must imagine Sisyphus happy. Now think about this, and I'll tell you why he said this, because the struggle itself is what fills the heart. That's what he said. And the act of pushing, of refusing to stop, is the awakening. So we have to kind of flip it in our brain and see it like that, instead of there is a struggle, and it's okay to talk about struggle, but at the same time, you don't want to whine and whine and whine and become the victim, because that's what a lot of people do. They're not grown up enough to take the responsibility and then, take the action, or keep taking the action, and be in some ways repetitive, like never stop. It's kind of, you have to think of it like that, right? So maybe the task isn't to remove the hill, but actually to transform the relationship to it. And we must really stop calling it a battle and start calling it evolution. Because it is evolution. Struggle is evolution, in my opinion. Without it, what would we be? I mean, this is how we gain all of our strength and our willpower, right? So, because every push, he says this, that every push toward truth, kindness, and justice, no matter how small, builds momentum for the collective climb, which is true. We see people that did it, and then 10 people follow that, and they do it because they saw that one person do it. So yes, it's easier to destroy than to build. And I have a perfect example about it, because I thought about this when I was talking to this person. I said the World Trade Center took 8 years. I think it was about 8 years. That's what I can remember, what I read in the paper. 8 years to build, right? And thousands of people working on the Trade Center, the World Trade Centers, and 15 minutes for it to crumble. So you see, the destruction has no endurance, but creation does. So the thing is that that's kind of this needle that we have to look at, because I mean, if you really, when you think about this and you think about how to build a business, like you always hear the great people that have built wonderful businesses and, 30 years, 40 years. And it's like that. It's not going to be, where they say, I don't know, the young kids say, your side hustle. Like, I really don't like that, the side hustle. That, I don't know why I don't like that phrase, side hustle. For some reason, it sounds really, there's no growth in it. It sounds like it's a side hustle to get you through to the other thing. I guess that's all right. But I mean, it's not, there's no endurance in it. And so, but, it's harder to build, and just like, to love or to forgive and to stand for truth. And in all these acts, from building to destruction to strength, the soul of humanity has to act upon that strength of not destroying, but of building. And that's where we have to grow up, and we have to realize the difference. So, like he says, the philosopher says, is that the curse is not the stone, but don't despise the hill. See it for what it is. Like the struggle, like I say. Yes, I've struggled. I know everybody. I don't know one person that hasn't struggled. I don't look at them like they're weak or something, I see it as part of the course of learning. And the training ground really is for our consciousness itself. This is how I look at it. And it sometimes can be, hard. But at the same time, we're here to evolve beyond the struggle, too. By the way, to, we have to choose to climb it. Like when you do a startup. You can listen to a lot of very successful people, and they always talk about it. It wasn't easy. I stayed up all night. I did this and that, and I barely got any sleep, and blah, blah, blah. And that's all, you choose that, and you climb it. And because every push toward that gain, if you want to call it, or the goal, even when the world is sliding, in another direction, it expands the boundaries of what it means to be human. And this is all part of it. And this is why I think it's important for us to talk about. Like, I would like to see, like, I love, motivations and stuff like that. But sometimes I get motivated listening to somebody tell their story. And when they started and how hard, like the struggle that they went through. Sometimes I think that that's good for people to speak about it and how they overcame it and how they stayed on course. There's a lot of people that I've listened to many stories about it, and I always get hyped up and I'm like, yes, let's do it. And the thing is because it's part of it. It's not to avoid that, because I don't know anybody that can avoid it unless they're, not human or something, but everybody goes through it. So in order to expand and to be a human, we go through this. So that's it for today, everybody, and I'll see you on the next video. I hope everybody has a great day. Thanks. Bye-bye. Remember to always be aware. All right. Bye now.